Two Kids and a Career is a production of Jill Devine Media.
We have a lot of work to do when it comes to helping those with mental illness. And in episode 45, when I talked to Gina about her husband's suicide, she talked about how it was October that they realized, and he had been having issues, that he was really in a different place. This was something different than they had experienced. And so they called his psychiatrist, and he wouldn't be able to get in until December. That's a problem.
Yeah.
That is a huge, huge problem. It has to be treated seriously. This is an illness.
Yes, it makes me so irate how difficult it is to see somebody who's qualified to help you when you're in that crisis state. And let's be honest, it takes a crisis state for most of us to get brave enough to reach out for help, right? Like,
yes,
it just does. That's human nature. I'm trying to change that by letting people know what the warning signs are. But oftentimes we just are trying to survive our life. And so it takes a very dark moment, rock bottom, and you need help now.
Two Kids and a Career is brought to you by Blondin Real Estate. They're a family-owned boutique-style brokerage with over 40 years of experience serving the counties that surround St. Louis. See the properties they have to offer at blondinrealestate.com. That's blondinrealestate.com. Hi there, and welcome to Two Kids and a Career. I'm Jill Devine. As an entrepreneur, wife, and mama, the daily grind of trying to build a business while taking care of kids and trying to maintain a healthy connection with my hubby, it's a lot. With this podcast, you're going to hear candid conversations with other moms, parenting experts who can share their knowledge and insight, or you'll just hear me rambling to get it all out. There's going to be tears, there's going to be laughter, but most importantly, there will be support. Take a listen and connect with me so we can grow and learn from one another. This is Two Kids and a Career. Welcome to another episode of Two Kids and a Career. Let me remind you to stick around to the end for our Supermom Shoutout. And for details on that, you can always head to JillDevine.com for some updates. So I have, it's no surprise, a long-winded introduction for my guest. But first, I won't make her wait through the whole introduction. Laura Fleetwood, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Jill. I am excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you. So let me explain this. I've obviously explained it to Laura before, but I want to explain it to you, the listener, to give you a little bit of a background of how things transpired. So if you have been paying attention to the podcast, you know that I have been open about growing my faith. I have a very long way to go, but I am on this journey where I'm diving in and I'm wanting to learn more. So with that being said, the church that I go to, the name is Messiah Lutheran. It is in a suburb of St. Louis, Missouri. I don't even really know why this particular moment happened, but I had been thinking about getting a tattoo on my wrist somewhere. And all of a sudden, I saw this woman on stage singing, and she put her hands and her arms up, and she had a tattoo on her wrist. And I was like, this is my sign. This is my sign. What is going on? In the process, and if you haven't figured out, that would be Laura that I am referring to. So in the process, I end up getting someone following me on Instagram under the name of Seeking the Still, which happens to be Laura. And I looked and I was like, wait a minute, that's the woman from church. Wait a minute, she has a really interesting story based on what I'm seeing. And then to make the story even longer, I have done some volunteer work. Traditionally, it's known as Sunday school. And Laura's sister, I would always volunteer with. And I started talking to her one day, and she said, that's my sister. The one with the tattoo, the one that's inspiring you, that you want on the podcast, that's my sister. It's maybe a funny little inside joke for us, but that's how we are connected now, Laura.
Absolutely. I couldn't believe it when you said that. That just made me smile because I love that you noticed the tattoo of all things. And I'm glad that I could inspire you to get your own. So,
Yes, yes. I wanna start with seeking the still, and when I saw your Instagram and I saw that you struggle with anxiety and depression, I started diving in a little bit more. And this is again perception. You think one thing and you really don't know, but sometimes what I was thinking was, "Oh my gosh, this woman struggles with anxiety and depression. How can she," because you are the director of brand and creative at the church we go to, and I thought to myself, "How can she be on stage and sing in front of all these people? How can she do these video announcements where everybody can see?" And it still until recently made me realize, okay, maybe that is anxiety to me, but that's not necessarily anxiety to you or someone else. And we are now starting to talk more about mental health and mental illness. And that's what I really kind of wanted to start with is how all of this transpired with seeking the still and the anxiety and the depression and the definition for you versus the definition for me.
sure. Well, it's one thing to look like you have it all together on the outside. You can do that and be falling apart on the inside. And that is kind of the start of my story is that, I never thought that I had anxiety ever, even though now looking back as a child, I can see that there were lots of warning signs and symptoms. But the reason I never knew it is because the way I coped with anxiety was to achieve and to be successful and to always plan for the worst case scenario. Those are things the world rewards when you're super successful and you can do anything you put your mind to. But that was just my way of numbing or pushing down the anxiety that I felt on the inside. And finally, it all came to a breaking point when I was 37 years old. So this was 6 years ago. And I call it a perfect storm because my life was super stressful at the time. I was working full time and, doing a lot of volunteering, and my husband was traveling. And I just started getting all of these physical symptoms of stress and anxiety, like not constantly nauseous, especially in the morning. And this isn't like morning sickness kind of nausea, but just like constant pit in my stomach, lost a lot of weight, started having trouble sleeping, couldn't fall asleep, lots of shaking, and just like I thought I had a physical issue. So I was going to doctors and one doctor said to me, this is anxiety. And I looked at her and I must have had the most incredulous look on my face. Like, who, me? Like, what do you mean? Have you seen my life? How could I have anxiety? And lo and behold, it kept getting worse and worse until I got to the point where I could no longer function in my life and ended up in a really dark place. And I think, we do a disservice when we think that someone is so successful that they, could never struggle, because it's often the people who look so strong that are actually struggling. They've just gotten so good at wearing a mask and hiding it behind things that, sometimes look nice and lovely to people on the outside. So it's real. It can happen to anyone. At age 37, I had to go to a treatment center and be evaluated and walked away with a diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder. Started having panic attacks and like really intense long-term anxiety where I had to take time off work and begin the journey of rediscovering who I really was and how I wanted to live. And for a long time, I kept saying, I just want the old Laura to be back. I don't like this new Laura that, is struggling. And what I learned is that the old Laura was not healthy. The old Laura didn't know some really important truths about who she was and how she was called to live in this world. And it was only through the darkness of this journey of kind of coming to the end of myself and realizing that I'm not in control and that God has this beautiful dream for me on this side of eternity. Um, and it comes through surrender. It comes through, giving up control. It comes through recognizing that I'm like a feather in the wind, and he's the one, he's the wind. He's the one blowing me from place to place where he wants me to be. So it's been a long, hard journey. And what I would say to anyone struggling is, as horrible as it seems in the moment, it can also be a gift. And so don't give up.
So how do you manage everything now?
So it was a process, there were seasons when I couldn't be on stage, I just couldn't. I was too much of an anxious mess to have that kind of pressure. And it's looked like lots of doctor visits, lots of therapy appointments, lots of time in prayer and writing and sharing my story with other people that struggle. I take medication. That is a big part, I think, of what has gotten me to where I am now. And I fought that, I fought that hard. I did not want to have to take an antidepressant or a sleeping medicine, but I got to a point where that's what I needed to do. And now I think, why didn't I do it sooner? I've
Mhm.
learned that we are body, mind, and spirit. And so often we try to just work on one of those areas. And the fact is, you can't separate them. So, when you have anxiety, literally the chemicals in your brain are out of whack. And that causes racing thoughts. It causes, issues in your mind, which then cause physical symptoms in your body, all of those warning signs that I had. So we have to look at ourselves holistically. And I wish, this is my dream, is to someday have an organization, a place where you can go to get help in all three areas at once. Unfortunately, right now, you just have to do it on your own. And so I had to create my own team. So I created my own team of a psychologist, of a psychiatrist, of my spiritual mentors, of a doctor. I did naturopath and a naturopath doctor. And thankfully I'm privileged and I could do that. There are a lot of people who can't. And so
Yeah.
now I just try to, I don't know, open the veil a little bit about what I've learned and help others who maybe don't have the same opportunities that I did to build their teams and to reach out for hope and help, because it's there. It's there. Unfortunately, it just takes some work on our end to put our team together.
When you were talking about, being privileged and having the opportunity to do these things, but even when you said you wanted to have a place that took care of all of those things, I've said this beyond the podcast. This was years ago and this is not an insurance debate, but we have a lot of work to do when it comes to helping those with mental illness. And in episode 45, when I talked to Gina about her husband's suicide, she talked about how it was October that they realized, and he had been having issues, that he was really in a different place. This was something different than they had experienced. And so they called his psychiatrist and he wouldn't be able to get in until December.
Mm,
That's a problem.
yes.
That is a huge, huge problem. And there are so many things that need to be done when it comes to, even a therapist. Like, I see a therapist and I am grateful that the insurance, it still works with the copay, and we've talked about it, how there are some people who can't see her because their insurance, she can't take their insurance, and their insurance doesn't cover those kinds of visits. And it's just too much money. It's just, it has to be treated seriously. This is an illness.
Yes, it makes me so irate how difficult it is to see somebody who's qualified to help you when you're in that crisis state. And let's be honest, it takes a crisis state for most of
Mhm.
us to get brave enough to reach out for help, right? Like
Yes.
it just does. That's human nature. I'm trying to change that by letting people know what the warning signs are, but oftentimes we just like are trying to survive our life. And so it takes a very dark moment, rock bottom, and you need help now. Like
Right.
you cannot wait 3 months. I remember that calling around to different psychiatrists. And yeah, it was 3 to 6 months if they were even accepting patients.
Right.
And it was just a miracle of God, literally, that I finally found the psychiatrist that I work with now, who I love. And I went through one that I didn't like so much before that. You know, it's like any other doctor. It's important to find the right fit. So I've asked my psychiatrist, why is it that there are not enough mental health providers? And the answer she gave me was very complicated. And, you know, it has to do with the education process and like how many people they let into the universities to study it and all kinds of things. But that has to change.
Yeah.
And I don't know what else besides a grassroots, you know, demand from those of us who recognize the problem is going to fix it, because you're right. It's just like needing to go to a medical doctor or a hospital. If you're having trouble breathing, you need the help then, you know?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's frustrating. It's so frustrating.
I didn't even, I mean, I knew it, but until you said it, when like most of the times in these situations, it is an immediate right then, right now, or tomorrow.
Mhm.
And that's it. So you are taking the knowledge that you have learned about yourself and you want to help others. You want to help women. You want to help young girls. And that's how Seeking the Still came about. You want to talk a little bit about how you got the name and then what Seeking the Still offers?
Sure. So I started blogging when my girls were young. So before all of the anxiety kind of stirred up in my life. And it was one day I was out with my daughters, and it was a beautiful day, and we were just like twirling around. And you know, I was like, this freedom, this sense of just enjoying the moment, is I want to capture it somehow. And it was like seeking the still, like that is this, I had this restlessness in my soul, um, that nothing was filling. And it was like, if I could just seek the still in every moment of my day, like that is what I need. And so I started journaling and blogging. And then that became a whole nother meaning to me when I went through anxiety. And it was no longer just this soul restlessness that I wanted to seek the still in, but it was the physical pain and anguish and the mental chaos in my mind. You know, I always say that so many of us have a weary body, a busy mind, and a restless soul.
Mm,
And
mm,
that it described me. And so it's like, okay, seeking the still then became this quest to have a calm mind and a restored body and a satisfied soul. And what happened is when my anxiety really got bad, I just like felt this overwhelming urge to share it on my blog. And so I did. And I documented bad days and shared the good days, and you know, the whole process. And so many women, and even men as well, but especially women, responded with me too. Like me too. And they were usually the women you never would have guessed.
mhm.
And I thought, you know what? This is something. There's something here. And if, you know, you probably hear it a lot, but if I can turn my pain into purpose, then it will have all been worth it. And I can look back now and see that that's exactly what God has done. And it is such now an honor and a privilege to share with women and girls. I do a lot of writing as well as speaking and mentoring and coaching, um, to just let them know they're not alone. And oftentimes I was just meeting with a mom today and her daughter's struggling. And she said, I don't understand it. Like, I don't struggle with anxiety. And so I feel like I can't help her because I just can't wrap my mind around it. And that's so true. I remember telling Justin in the midst of a panic attack, he's like, Laura, what is it that you're so worried about? And I looked at him and I said, everything and nothing all at the same
Mhm.
time. Like, you can't explain it unless you've been through it. So
Yep.
that is my mission now, is to use creative methods, very practical as well as faith-based methods, to help women and girls have some practical tools as well as just some wise um, experience, from somebody who still struggles. I mean, I still struggle. I would say that I'm in a good place, but I still have moments and I still have days that I have to take off work because the overwhelm or the physical anxiety is just too much. So I think that's God's way of keeping me humble and like keeping me in tune with what it feels like, so that He can use me. And He is, like, every day I get messages and texts from people who are struggling, especially now with the coronavirus. I mean, we could talk about that. It's a whole nother,
Yep.
Americans are the most stressed out people on the planet anyway. And now that's just been magnified. So it's a tough time for a lot of people, but I want anyone listening to know there's hope and that you're not alone. And it is possible to walk through it, but you have to go through it. You can't just jump out of it. It's a process.
If someone wanted to reach out to you or to see some of your writings, where would they go?
Seekingthestill.com is the main platform where all of that is located. So that is where you can go, or follow me on Instagram or Facebook as well. But a lot of great free resources are at seekingthestill.com.
I want to pivot now and take the last part of our conversation and talk about faith. And for someone that is growing their faith, and for someone like you who is, I mean, in my opinion, you probably are always growing your faith, but you're a lot further along than I am. I don't understand why there have been certain things put into people's head, and I'll just use me as an example, that if you do have a tattoo, there might be something wrong with you and you're not a Christian, you're a sinner. Or if you want to wear, I don't know, leather into church. I don't know. That's such a silly example, but like there's been all these things that I think people have made up in their mind that makes them, or they consider themselves not a Christian. Does that make sense to you, what I'm trying to say? Like, if you like to listen to rap music or you like to listen to country music and you don't listen to, gospel music, then you're not a Christian.
Yeah.
And I am learning that we have to do something about that and make sure that you're welcome. Like, I know our church is very good about that. Again, the woman on stage has tattoos. Um, so I kind of wanted to pick your brain on that, because it's troublesome to me that this idea exists. If it's even just in my brain, that's hard to comprehend.
Yes, it's very sad because it's actually what Jesus would say is the exact opposite. Jesus came for everybody, regardless of what music you like, what you look like, how you dress. That does not matter at all. And yet, there is that stereotype, I think, because of judgmental experiences that people have had in the past with Christians. Christians are human and we are fallible and messed up like everybody else.
Mhm.
And so I think that there has been a season in Christianity when the church was known for what the church was against instead of what the church is for or who the church is for.
Ah, okay.
And that is the shift that I am championing. And I know that Messiah is as well, is that we want to be known for what we're for and who we're for. And we are for the world. We're for the broken. We are for the mom who is going through a divorce. We are for the person who, is addicted to pain pills. We are for the businessman and the janitor and somebody who has a sleeve of tattoos. It's the church is meant to be for all. And it's very sad that there is a perception, and rightly so in some cases, that had to begin somewhere, that if you're not judged worthy, that you're
Yeah.
not accepted into a church. Because the truth is, we are all sinners. There's not one sin that is worse than another in Christ's eyes. And that's why he came to cover it all. So please, anyone listening, you are welcome. Like, the Lord Jesus Christ wants you no matter what. In fact, the farther you are from him, the more he's going to seek you. So
Yeah.
thank you for bringing that up, because I think that's important to talk about.
Well, I brought this up with Leslie Halliday in season 3. I had told her that I distinctly remember being at church one day. This goes exactly what you're saying, that we're for people, not against people, and it doesn't matter. But I remember Pastor Jim talking about how in some cases, the church would shut their doors on individuals who got divorced. The church would shut their doors on individuals who were facing addiction. And he had said, that's when the church doors should open even wider. And it hit me like, you're right. I mean,
Yeah.
we need that. And you just hit on, like, the farther away you are from Jesus, he's like, bring it on. Come on in. I want to help you. I want to show you. And that's what we need. I think what people sometimes maybe forget, and this is what I'm trying to comprehend, is that just because you are a Christian, you're still going to fail. Like you said, you're going to mess up. And that's that's the point. That's what Jesus is teaching us. Like, hey, remember this. You can grow. You can be better. And it's just, sin is all around us. Sin is inside us. And I just think we got to, we got to do that shift. Like you said, we've got to do the shift for the people. And, something about the judging is like, eh, that's exactly what a Christian isn't supposed to be. They're not supposed to be judgmental. So if they're a Christian, they're judging you because you don't go to church, or they're judging you because you're whatever. That's not what we're supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all you have to do is open a Bible and look at the words of Jesus. Jesus was so full of grace, and he ran towards those who were hurting and who were shunned by the community. He ran to them. He saw them. Jesus sees into the heart of people. He does not care about outward appearances. He sees into your heart, and the beauty of it is that he came to give you life to the full on this side of heaven and into eternity. And so I think if there's one thing in regard to faith that I could put out into the world today, it would be that it all begins with a relationship with Jesus. If your faith doesn't start with that relationship, then it can easily become about rules, following the 10 Commandments, acting and behaving the way that you assume you have to act and behave. But when you have a relationship with Jesus through his Spirit, you see that he's all about grace and love. I mean, yes, there is the law, God is perfect. And so anything that's not perfect is in conflict with God. Well, guess what? We're all not perfect. And so
Mm.
we would constantly be in conflict with God, and we'd be separated from him, right? If it were up to us. But Jesus came to bridge the gap. He came so that we could be in relationship with God, in relationship with Jesus. And when that is what fills you, then your life changes naturally because you're in relationship with him. So I think that the church would be wise to encourage people to pursue a relationship with Jesus before worrying about how someone behaves, because you're not going to change your behavior until you change your belief and until you have that love in your life. So that's the way that I look at it.
I love it. I mean, I will say that there's, a whole bunch of different conversations about faith. And I know that I'm not here to argue the science side. That's not me. That's not where I am. That's my journey is growing my relationship with Jesus right now. So I really appreciate you saying that. I have one last question about that before we wrap up is that do you feel, and I guess maybe this is everybody's different, but I have asked past guests about their shift in their minds as far as just having a more sense of peace or more sense of just positive thinking. And I know the answer is always like, I don't really know how long it took me, but it just happened. Meaning you don't wake up tomorrow and all of a sudden you start thinking positive. You don't wake up tomorrow and all of a sudden you're praying every minute. But when you do have that and it's created, do you feel like with this relationship that you are with your with Jesus and your faith that you feel a little bit more content?
For sure, because, before my anxiety journey, I knew that Jesus was Lord or master of my eternity, right? I knew that because I've been a Christian since I was born. I can't ever remember not being a Christian. I was raised in it. So, like, I knew that I was going to heaven, right? I knew he
Mhm.
was Lord of my eternity, but I didn't know he was Lord of my life. Like that he cares about the details, that he will make a way when there is no way, that he can be trusted and depended on. And when I had nothing else, when I could no longer trust myself, when I could no longer had control over my thoughts or my behavior or my feelings, all I had was Jesus. And I remember lying on my bathroom floor in panic attacks, and I would hold out my hand and just like imagine that Jesus was holding my hand, leading me through my day. And what that did is it built trust because I saw how he provided. I saw how he sent the right person at the right time, how he got me a doctor, that would have never happened, and all of these things. And so what I would say is like practice surrendering to him and practice trusting. And when you see how he's faithful, then that builds your trust to trust him with a little more of your life. And then you see how he's faithful, and that gives you more trust to get to, for bigger parts of your life. And then suddenly, like, you're giving away your money and you're like, I don't care because Jesus is going to provide, and it's crazy. Like it is the wildest ride of your life when when you can really start trusting in him and to know that he is faithful to every person on this planet. Like I don't get it and it's not always
Yeah.
in the way that you want it to be. Like, don't think that I'm like, oh, I want $1 million and Jesus is going to
Right.
make that show up. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like even just the little things. Like he's always working everything for good, and we don't
Uh-huh.
see it in the moment, but when we can look back on our life and we go, yeah, there's no way I could have made that happen. Like that was a God thing, and it's true. So yeah, I have lots of peace, not always, but I have lots of peace because I know I can trust him.
You make me want to learn even more and grow even more on this spiritual journey. I mean, to push me to say, okay, what if I did this? Or how do I do this? So I will definitely have you back on. We will be talking more about spiritual stuff. And, I did not say this at the beginning. Laura's also a girl mom. She has 2 daughters, and we have lots of conversations to have about that as well.
Absolutely. Yes, we learned that our girls are the same, distance apart age-wise. So mine are just
Yep.
like, 12 years older than yours, but it's like looking at your girls is like looking at mine when they were itty bitty. So yeah, there's lots of stories to share.
Yeah, you can give me lots of advice. Well, thank you for sharing your story with me and with those that are listening. Again, seekingthestill.com. And you can also follow Laura with Seeking the Still on Instagram and Facebook. Laura, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was such an honor to be part of your show. So keep up the great work.
Before we get to this week's Supermom Shoutout, there are a couple of things that Laura said in this week's episode that made me think of one of my sponsors, Blonde in Real Estate. So Laura said something along the lines of when she really had that relationship with Jesus and her faith was growing, she started to feel a little bit more content, and she started giving, and by giving, she started receiving. And she did say, hey, listen, I'm not telling you you're going to get $1 million just because you start growing your faith and relationship with Jesus. But she did say he's always working everything for good. And it did make me think, well, of course, if I had $1 million, I would definitely upgrade my home. But just to be patient and to really think about the things that you want in life. And so I do know one of the things that I want in life is to have a bigger home or to have more land and to have some more freedom for the girls to run around. But I also know I need to be patient, and those good things will come. And those good things will be there for you when you're ready. And those good people will be the people behind Blonde in Real Estate. They definitely care about your needs. They care about placing you exactly where you need to be. And they're going to be patient with you. They're going to make sure that you are definitely investing in the right place at the right time. So I encourage you to write down blondeinrealestate.com for anything in the future, or even right now. Maybe there is something that you want right now. They can help you out. They're a great team, and just like Laura said in this episode, she makes sure that she has the best team to help her with everything that's going on in her life. This is a great team with Blonde in Real Estate. They'll help you with all of your real estate needs. blondeinrealestate.com. All right, it is time for this week's Supermom Shoutout. This week's Supermom is Tiffany. She was nominated by her friend Andrea. Tiffany is from Wentzville, Missouri. And here's what Andrea has to say. Tiffany is an amazing mom of 4, a 19-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 3-year-old. She's an amazing photographer who ran a photography business while going through a very difficult time of infertility. In between the 13-year-old and 4-year-old, she had several miscarriages and was certain she would never conceive again. She used her photography business as a way to help herself grieve the realization, or so she thought, of never having more children. Fast forward, she ended up having 2 boys back to back, all the while finally going through therapy for sexual abuse that happened to her as a child. You might be thinking, why would I tell you this? Well, she started a social media photography campaign to erase the stigma around sexual abuse. The campaign is called Project Ember 2020. You can find it on Facebook, and I encourage you to go to this Facebook page and you will see what a truly amazing woman she is. I am so happy and proud to call her my friend. Tiffany, I see you and I support you, and this is your Supermom Shoutout. If you want to be like Andrea and nominate a special Supermom in your life, all you have to do is email me, hello@jilldevine.com. Tell me that Supermom's name, where she's from, and why you're nominating her. It's that easy. I want to thank you for listening to this episode of Two Kids in a Career. I really appreciate the support, and you can follow along with updates at Jill Devine. That's on Instagram, and the website, jilldevine.com. Don't forget, I would love if you would subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It just makes it a little bit easier to get in front of others when I have more ratings and reviews, to be completely honest with you. I want to thank you again for the support and for listening to Two Kids and a Career.